She was a maid in a millionaire's mansion, but this incredible twist left everyone saying, "Mom." Maria leaned against the dusty attic rafters, her fingers brushing over the elegant frames that captured life in strokes of color and emotion. The mansion loomed grandly beneath her, a beacon of wealth housed in a facade of stately grace. Each morning as she scrubbed the floors of rooms adorned with crystal chandeliers, she envisioned a different future, one where Sophia's laughter rang through a home that belonged entirely to them. Yet here she was, a single mother disguised in the uniform that marked her as someone else's maid. It was a world of privilege, yet she was tethered by hard reality, the cache of paintings a hidden treasure that could turn their lives around and afford Sophia the college education Maria never had was now before her. The thought of pocketing this fortune tempted her like sweet fruit just out of reach. But every way she turned, feelings of unease crept in. How could she keep a secret of this magnitude? Would it poison the very integrity she had fought so earnestly to uphold? Conflict swirled like a tempest inside her chest, and a flicker of anxiety ignited her mind. What if she confronted the owners and they dismissed her? Would they see her as simply the maid or recognize the blood that tied them through the paintings? As she sought clarity among the clutter, she discovered a name in a dusty ledger: Antonio. A distant relative, a thread tied to family history woven deep within those canvases. Each word drew her deeper into a legacy, a lineage of perseverance against a world that often turned blind eyes toward the less fortunate. Maria's heart raced, wrestling with the weight of history and the fear of the present. Should she protect her family's past or chase after a future that glittered so enticingly? Mom Sophia's soft voice echoed in her thoughts. Would her daughter understand this struggle? The mansion's opulence towered over their battles. Maria looked down at her hands, calloused yet resilient, trembling as she considered how this hidden wealth could yield change. But what would it mean for their relationship forged in honesty? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Under the weight of anxiety, Maria made her way toward the grand living room, intent on unveiling her discovery. Her breath quickened, the glow from the chandeliers cast shadows across her anxious face. With a surge of courage, she would confront them, risk tearing down the walls between their very different worlds, and demand acknowledgement of their connection. "Mom," she whispered again, bracing for the flood of uncertainty that threatened to drown her. Could they see the heart behind her uniform? The tales her ancestors suffered, the injustices woven into their very fabric. As she stepped over the threshold, gripping the edges of the ledger with clammy fingers, the words lodged in her throat. In that moment, everything hung in the balance. This revelation could shatter the confines of her existence, yet it held the weight of destiny. Would she reclaim their stories, or cease to define her own? Tension coursed through her as she opened her mouth to speak. The air thickened, layered with anticipation. Could this moment define who she was? In the silence before the storm, Maria stood at the precipice, questioning whether she could extract not just a future for Sophia, but honor a legacy waiting to emerge from the shadows. The chandelier's light flickered as Maria stepped into the grand living room, forcing her to acknowledge a depth of vulnerability she had kept at bay all these years. The walls adorned with paintings felt like they bore a witness to her struggle. She could turn away, retreat to the safety of the attic, or face the storm brewing on the other side of her uncertainty. Each face of the portraits around her seemed to gaze expectantly, hundreds of eyes silently urging her forward. There was no longer a question of whether she would act, the only choice left was how. As the silence enveloped her, Maria's heart raced, drowned by the weight of expectations, hers and those of an ancestry she had never fully embraced. "Mom." The echo of Sophia's voice, innocent and pure, flooded her mind. What would this revelation mean for her daughter? The thought pushed her forward, she could not retreat now. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice wavering as it sliced through the heaviness of the moment. A figure dressed in impeccable elegance turned toward her, eyes narrowing as her title, the Maid, became painfully relevant in an instant. Would they see the depth of her being, or only the uniform that labeled her worth? "Can I help you?" The voice was cool, indifferent, but beneath it, something flickered, a signal for hope or dismissal. Maria clenched the ledger tightly, willing her trembling hands to convey the urgency brimming within her. "I have something I need to discuss," she replied, surprising herself with the firmness in her tone. This was not just about her, it was for Sophia, for the generations tied to her bloodline buried beneath years of hardship. The figure regarded her with a mixture of calculation and curiosity. "You're in the wrong room. The staff quarters are no," Maria interrupted, gathering her courage. "Please, let me explain myself." The boldness of her own words rang out like an act of rebellion against the world that had kept her small. The other woman's expression shifted slightly. Was there intrigue or mere amusement? "Go on," she prompted, leaning against the polished marble. A hint of condescension lingered in her tone, yet something in her posture suggested she might be open to hearing more. Taking a breath that felt like it encompassed all her aspirations, Maria began. "I found this in the attic." She gestured to the ledger, and as it slid from her fingers, she watched it land with a soft thud on the expanse of the gleaming wood floor. As the ledger opened to the page revealing Antonio's name, a wave of warmth enveloped her, an acknowledgement of connection sparking through her veins. "Antonio?" The woman straightened, a flicker of recognition crossing her features. "You're related to him?" "Yes." The single word was a bridge, crafted from her past and extending into what she hoped would be a brighter future. "I want to know more about these paintings. They belong to my family." The silence that followed was heavy, thick with unspoken histories. The woman's eyes flared with something akin to challenge, as if weighing the expression of merit against presumptions. "And what would you propose we do about that?" An unexpected surge of clear vision washed over Maria's mind. This wasn't merely an inquiry, this was a negotiation, an assertion of her place at the table that had always been denied her. "We could reclaim our legacy together." For a moment, clarity punctured the fog of uncertainty, and Maria sensed the potential for change, both for herself and for those who had come before. Even as fear flickered like a distant flame, she felt her resolve hardening. The woman's gaze shifted, appraising the woman before her, not merely a maid, but a seeker of truth, an owner of legacy. The atmosphere crackled with tension as she considered her response, and Maria knew she was no longer merely defined by her surroundings. The hourglass of fate had turned, and it was time to confront the next chapter of her life, marked by determination and the power of reclaiming story. "What if," the woman began, her voice low, testing. Maria could feel the stakes rising, each word laced with the tension of possibility. In that pivotal moment, Maria felt threads of connection pulling taut, signaling the beginning of a journey she had long awaited. Yet, ahead lay uncertainties, questions that needed to be asked. Would her plea for recognition withstand the test of scrutiny? The door to her new reality creaked open, but would she walk through it or allow the weight of doubt to hold her back? Maria felt her pulse quicken as the woman's words hung in the air, the challenge crackling like electricity between them. "What if we did? What would we have to work with?" The inquiry slipped from the other woman's lips, carrying the weight of a moment teetering on the brink of transformation. I have the ledger," Maria replied, her voice steadier than before, an anchor in the swirling tempest of her thoughts. "It mentions several paintings, all attributed to my ancestors. They could be worth something, or at least carry stories worth telling." She wrapped her arms around herself, conscious of the visual imbalance the simple fabric of her uniform created against the backdrop of gilded luxury. "Stories, yes," the woman mused. "But history, dear, that's what commands value." Her tone was still clipped but tinged with something softer, curiosity mixed with trepidation. "These paintings hold tales, yes, and then there are titles, and the integrity of ownership." Maria inhaled deeply, the air laden with unspent ambition. "I want to understand. I want to tie these strands together. For Sophia." She dared to maintain eye contact, seeking affirmation, yet anticipating the dismissal she had grown so accustomed to. The other woman tilted her head, considering. You speak of family and legacy, but legacy is not merely about blood. It's about how you place yourself within that narrative. She stepped back, arms crossing as she mentally juggled the implications of Maria's revelation. What makes you think you can navigate this world? You may be expecting respect that was never afforded to you. Each word was a subtle blade, a provocation to Maria's self-worth. Yet, instead of crumbling, her resolve solidified. Because I've lived it. I've felt the weight of these walls, the constraints of silence in the attic. I might have been a maid, but I am more than that. Challenge flashed across the woman's face, paired with the flicker of admiration. A subtle acknowledgement, a dangerous recognition passed between them. So, prove it. The challenge was set, and with it bloomed anticipation. Maria nodded, a silent agreement forming. What is your name? She asked, feigning ignorance but sensing the shift in power dynamics. Claudia, the woman replied, resuming a sense of control. Now, if you intend to venture deeper into this, you will need more than a ledger. You will need allies, an understanding of the art world, and persistence. Not just because you want to reclaim your legacy, but because you are brave enough to challenge the status quo. Maria nodded again, intensity burning in her core. I will. Just tell me where to start. Claudia uncrossed her arms and walked toward one of the paintings, her fingers brushing the ornate frame. Acquaint yourself with the art. Uncover everything about your family's ties. I can help you navigate certain circles, the right people to meet. But you must engage beyond this room. You need to show them you're not just another maid. Emboldened by Claudia's grudging support, Maria felt an unfamiliar surge of agency. The walls around her, once stifling, now seemed to reverberate with potential. She was no longer just an onlooker in a world demanding deference, she would place herself in the very heart of the art scene, intertwining the essence of her ancestry with her identity. Then let us get started, Maria said, a new fire igniting within her as Angela nodded slowly, respect visibly dawning within her gaze. With a sense of purpose driving her onward, Maria stepped forth, excitement and nerves blending as she pondered the scope of work ahead. She was crafting her path beyond the walls of service. It was time to uncover her family's past, and in doing so, define her future. But one question remained: would the art world welcome her, or would her past as a maid overshadow her quest for recognition? As that thought lingered, Maria prepared for the challenges that lay ahead: confrontations with those who might resist her ascent, ghosts of her ancestors whispering the stories that begged to be told. Maria stood in front of the gleaming canvas, felt the weight of Claudia's expectations bear down on her shoulders. The intensity of their conversation lingered like an electrified charge. She could almost hear the pulse of her heartbeat in time with the ticking clock across the room. Each second felt like a potential opportunity slipping through her fingers. She steadied her breath, channeling the renewed determination coursing through her veins. Claudia had given her a mission: uncover the truth behind her family's legacy. Maria turned the words over in her mind, treating them not just as instructions but as a promise to herself. How could she begin to navigate this world, to prove she belonged? The intricacies of the art world loomed large, a labyrinth of power and influence, but something deep within her stirred. This was not merely a challenge but an awakening, a chance to ignite her own narrative. Emboldened, Maria made her way to the stacks of books lining the vast library, an impressive wealth of knowledge waiting to be unearthed. Every tome represented an uncharted territory, each page a possible clue to her past. Fingers trailing along the spines, she hesitated at the books on art history, ancient practices, cultural revolutions, economic influences. She paused, a question crystallizing in her mind: what if she approached this as both a scholar and an activist? In a swift motion, she pulled a book filled with sumptuous images and descriptions from the shelf, the crisp pages welcoming her with the scent of old paper. Flipping through them, she marveled at the beauty of the artworks, each telling a story embedded within paint and canvas. Maria's pulse quickened not only with excitement but with a growing sense of responsibility. She would not just seek to reclaim a legacy, but also to redefine what that legacy could mean. Hours slipped away as she immersed herself in the narratives of her ancestors, piecing together threads of stories that had long been forgotten. With each chapter, her confidence bloomed. Names, styles, and connections weaved a richer tapestry, dramatically transforming her perspective. She paused only when Claudia entered, observing quietly, a hint of admiration flickering across her face. "You've been busy, I see," Claudia said, evaluating Maria with a critical yet approving glare. "Art is not just about appreciation. It's about understanding context, influence, and legacy." She stepped closer, pointing at an image of a painting that bore a resemblance to the traits Maria recognized in her family. "Is this one of your ancestors?" A thrill shot through her as she nodded, bubbling with enthusiasm. "Yes. This piece belonged to them. I can see it now, the techniques, the emotions incorporated. It speaks to our lineage." Claudia aligned her arms confidently. "Good. Connect with it. Each piece should tell your journey, Maria. But remember, knowledge without application is nothing. You need to go out there and become part of the conversation." The word struck her as a call to arms, igniting a fire she hadn't fully understood existed within her. She had spent so long confined within the limits of what she thought she was capable of. Now, Claudia was revealing the truth. She had the power to carve her own niche. "Where do I begin?" Maria exhaled, the urgency in her voice underscoring her earnestness. "Attend a gallery opening next week," Claudia instructed, her tone shifting to a brisk professionalism. "Meet those who matter. But know this: be prepared for indifference. Not all will greet your enthusiasm with open arms." The surge of excitement morphed into a knot of apprehension in her stomach. Could she truly face them? The thought of rejection lingered, but the thought of remaining in the shadows propelled her forward. She had to confront this fear, challenge the notion that her past defined her future. Maria clenched her fists, the excitement pulsating through her body. "I'll do it," she affirmed with resolve. "I won't let the past overshadow me." As the world around her buzzed with the promise of new beginnings, a thought crept in: could embracing this challenge reshape her very identity? She was on the precipice of something vast and unpredictable. In that moment, standing amidst the vibrant history, she understood that this journey wasn't simply a reclamation of her family's past. It was a bold step into her own uncharted future. Yet, as the prospect of the gallery hung in the air like a storm cloud, a darker thought loomed. Would she be ready when the time came? Would her newfound strength be enough to overcome the inevitable storm of skepticism? With that question echoing, Maria prepared herself for the adventure ahead, determined to carve a new legacy, not just for her ancestors, but for herself as well. Maria's pulse raced as she surveyed the vibrant paintings adorning the gallery walls, each canvas alive with color and a story begging to be told. The opening was beyond anything she had imagined, an intoxicating melange of artistic achievement and social dynamism. She prepared, practiced her introduction, and told herself she belonged among these creators. Her focus narrowed onto a group huddled in animated discussion near a striking abstract piece. She felt the magnetic pull of their engagement, their laughter punctuating the atmosphere. Yet, an invisible wall kept her at arm's length. The knot in her stomach tightened, a rebuttal to the confidence she had cultivated. She was ready, but was she truly prepared? As she hovered on the edge of the scene, she overheard fragmented sentences that sparked her curiosity. They spoke of revolutionary techniques, of challenging norms in art. Maria's heart raced with a sense of urgency. She wanted to contribute to the dialogue weaving itself among these titans of the art world, but hesitation gripped her. What could she possibly offer? A fleeting moment flashed through her mind. The history books had unveiled a lineage rich with talent, but her own experience felt shallow by comparison. Who was she to challenge the discussions of those who had spent years mastering their craft? The voices faded. In a surge of motivation, she took a deep breath, willing herself to step forward, longing to break free from the fear that had held her hostage. "Excuse me," she finally managed, stepping closer to the group, the words tumbling out a mix of nervous energy and determination. What do you think about the evolution of abstract expressionism? Do you believe it still holds relevance to contemporary artists? Silence enveloped her for a heartbeat. Maria's breath caught, but then the crowd turned toward her. A woman with fiery red hair smiled, her curiosity piqued. That's an interesting question. What makes you ask? To her surprise, Maria felt a spark of confidence ignite within her. I was inspired by my ancestors' techniques and philosophies. I believe their approach can still resonate in today's works. After all, art is about continuous dialogue, isn't it? The woman nodded, clearly intrigued. Absolutely. We need to push boundaries, but we also need to understand where we come from. The conversation flowed, and Maria found herself swept into a world of back-and-forth exchanges, ideas flowing effortlessly. Her passion blossomed into eloquence she hadn't known existed. The initial knot in her stomach loosened, replaced by a growing sense of purpose. She was engaging with the very essence of the art community she had long admired, but then the conversation shifted. A man with an assertive presence interjected, skepticism dripping from his voice. That sounds lovely, but how can someone with no gallery representation claim to connect deeply to such complex themes? Her heart raced again, the harsh light of his doubt glaring. The previous enthusiasm wobbled under the weight of his disbelief. She had dreamed of this moment, but was she prepared for a confrontation? The criticism felt personal, as if he plucked the threads of her insecurities. Maria paused, yet she knew she couldn't retreat. Instead, she leaned into the challenge. I may not have representation now, but my background gives me a unique perspective, she asserted, her voice steadier than she felt. Art can also be a reflection of one's journey, the struggle, the passion, and the quest for identity. The atmosphere shifted, murmurs of intrigue began to ripple through the crowd. Was this the turning point she needed, or would she remain just another shadow among giants? As the debates continued, Maria felt a blend of exhilaration and trepidation. This was her proving ground, the moment she had waited for, but a lingering uncertainty gnawed at her. Would her voice carry weight, or had she simply placed herself on a stage destined for failure? With each passing moment, Maria realized the stakes were rising. She was confronted not only with the challenge of winning over her peers but also with the personal realization that her path was only just beginning. Would she emerge from this evening as a part of their world, or would she succumb to the shadows once more? As the discussions intensified, her next move loomed large, the moment of truth inching ever closer. What would she choose? The vibrant cacophony around Maria surged like a tidal wave, yet within her, fierce determination brewed. Every word exchanged among the artists intensified the pulse of the evening, and the once foreign atmosphere now wrapped around her like an old coat. Despite the lingering doubt posed by the skeptic's question, she sensed a shift, a growing acceptance of her presence fueled by the urgency of her latent ambition. While the debate continued, Maria surveyed her surroundings, observers shifting from mere spectators to members of a dynamic clay. She realized then that her voice had roots, ones deeply intertwined with the essence of what art was meant to provoke. She could contribute, the question now was how. Can I challenge myself further? She pondered, enthusiasm electrifying her thoughts. She observed her fellow discussants, noting their enthusiasm or skepticism. It was time for her to embrace the risks that came with being vulnerable. Her ancestry, a heritage rich in artistic expression, held more weight than she had allowed herself to recognize. Art is not just a profession, it's a battlefield, she thought, echoing the fiery determination in her chest. She took stock of her own experiences growing up under the kindness of her grandmother, learning about paint mixing and the philosophies that lay behind the beauty of creation. Shared stories woven through generations would be the linchpin of her articulation. As the conversation swayed, Maria raised her hand, capturing the attention of those around her once more. I think, she began, voice steady but imbued with an iron will, that we need to analyze not just the historical context of the art but also the personal stories that drive creation. Each artist carries a legacy, a weight of emotions and struggles that deserve to be explored. How do you address your stories in your work? The man with the skeptical tone opened his mouth, poised to deliver another critique. But before he could, the fiery-haired woman interjected, "That's a powerful point, Maria. Personal narratives are often the most potent sources of inspiration. How might we develop that idea further?" Encouraged by her receptiveness, Maria pressed on. "We can start to collaborate on projects that explicitly interweave our backgrounds with our art. Imagine a gallery reinventing how art displays not just creativity but the roots that produce it." Intrigued glances exchanged among her audience fed her confidence. Maria felt she stood on the cusp of a breakthrough as collective curiosity bubbled in the air. Passion replaced prior hesitation, a rhythm forming in her mind as fresh ideas unfurled. Yet, in the midst of ascendancy, the critical man's voice rose once more. "Are you suggesting collaboration over individuality? Isn't that a compromise on a personal vision?" His tone questioned her integrity, and for a moment, the safety net of confidence frayed. Compromise wasn't that what had stifled her for so long? Compromise to fit in, compromise to be accepted? "No," she answered, her voice firmer, "what I propose is an exploration of individuality through interwoven experiences. Individual voices strengthen the fabric of our narrative, not wash them out. We can be authentic while still recognizing the stories that influence us." The room brimmed with tension not just from the discussion but from a shared realization that here lay the potential for deeper connection. She felt the shift resonate beneath them, a collective heartbeat amidst diverging perspectives. Exhilaration coursed through her. She was no longer an observer in the art world, merely discussing art, she was a participant forging her path forward, unafraid of the vulnerability it set forth. But as the discussion took a different turn, a whisper of uncertainty crept back in. Was her voice truly strong enough to rise above workshop rhetoric? Would they join her in weaving a narrative tapestry? Or would her ambition crumble beneath self-doubt? The clock struck midnight, and the atmosphere throbbed with new potential, a glimpse of what could be a project that transcended individual achievement and flourished amid collaboration. Maria sensed the momentum swinging in her favor but felt the chilling shadow of self-doubt loom large once more. The stakes were clearer now, rippling through her heart. A crossroads that was as exhilarating as it was terrifying loomed in her future. How would she navigate this newfound resolve? Would the battles for creative authenticity set her apart, or isolate her in her journey? The time had come to face the very shadow of doubt that had once stifled her creativity. Would she seize the opportunity ahead, or retreat into the comfort of anonymity? The decision felt monumental as she weighed her possibilities against the cost of her ambitions. The air shifted as Maria's thoughts collided with reality. The initial thrill she felt began to fray, and with it, an unsettling thought surfaced: what if she was merely meant to observe, not lead? The skepticism from the man lingered, ricocheting in her mind. It felt like the shadow of a giant looming over her aspirations, reminding her of the fragility of her newfound ambition. As the discussion continued to rise and ebb, Maria began to spiral into an internal dialogue. Questions of worthiness churned within her. Was she truly prepared to challenge the status quo of her own narrative? Art was indeed a battleground, but it was also a hall of mirrors, reflecting back her fears and hesitations. She clenched her fists under the table, prepared to fight back against the encroaching doubts. Clearing her throat, she redirected her focus, her gaze sweeping across familiar yet thrilling faces. Maria understood something vital: vulnerability could transform into strength when expressed authentically. She envisioned what her next steps could materialize into a collection of stories that could ignite a community's collective fire. This tangible dream filled her anew with inspiration. What if she drowned out the critic's voice? What if she channeled that energy instead into something empowering? Maybe individual stories could be highlighted, each contributing to a bigger picture, she thought passionately. With renewed vigor, Maria spoke again. What if we focus on the concept of a narrative installation? We could create mixed media pieces that are immersive, allowing viewers to experience individual artists' tales, deep dives into our personal histories. The concept, freshly minted from her bubbling enthusiasm, felt more cohesive in her mind. Each section could symbolize a journey, where our separate paths intersect within the shared space of the gallery. The excitement from her surroundings reignited as her peers continued to respond to the energy she presented. The fiery-haired woman nodded vigorously, excitement lighting her face. "I love that idea. It creates depth while honoring our individual artistic choices." But then the skeptic spoke again, his voice laced with challenge. "But is that not just a way to dilute your own vision, to hide behind others' stories? Are you prepared to put your vulnerability out there, or are you afraid of what that exposure might cost you?" Maria felt the passion in her chest falter for a moment. The weight of this question pressed upon her, revealing the heart of her struggle. She pictured herself hesitant, paralyzed in front of a blank canvas, afraid to mark it with her unique brushstroke due to fear. "No," she declared slowly, forming each word with care, "I am not afraid to be seen. My story is wrapped in the stories of others. We learn from one another, each of us a thread in an intricate tapestry." She took a deep breath, the tension rising and releasing like the tide. "My individuality is heightened in the very act of collaboration. I'm ready to expose myself, not just as a creator, but as part of a narrative larger than my own." The room buzzed with dynamic energy. Curious eyes bore into her, a palpable shift anchoring her resolve. She understood that this was a pivotal moment in her evolution, not merely identifying with a collective, but defining her space within it. Amidst the thrumming excitement, however, Maria felt a dull pang of anxiety settling in her stomach. Was she prepared for the emotional labor involved in sharing herself openly? Could she embrace vulnerability when it was dauntingly laid bare? Questions of her own worthiness nagged at her, but the courage she had discovered now seemed to blossom into something almost tangible. Feeling the weight of the moment hover over her, she realized this endeavor might demand authenticity she had yet to uncover fully. Doubts played like shadows in her mind, dancing around her fervor. As the evening wore on, Maria made a silent promise to confront her fears head-on, to strip away the protective layers with each step forward. The crowd's engagement might just provide her that much-needed distraction from her insecurities. She could invite them into her world, and in doing so, maybe she would uncover hidden facets of herself. Yet as the discussion began to dwindle, one thought lingered vividly anew: was she truly ready for the reckoning that lay ahead? The dawning realization settled heavily upon her. Each artistic story woven into the fabric of her life was not merely the crutch of vulnerability but a bastion of strength fortified against self-doubt. The deeper she delved into her own narrative, the more she understood that to share her art was to ultimately confront the fullness of her identity, and in that moment, another question burrowed deep into her urgency: what revelations would emerge when she unveiled the stories that held the power to transform her from a meek artist to a bold creator? It was a moment ripe with potential, yet laced with uncertainty, and she knew she stood not only at a creative threshold but at a defining crossroads of her life. Would she dare to leap? The faint sound of applause echoed through the gallery as the discussions faded, yet Maria felt a charged silence expand around her in that moment. The weight of her own words dissolved the earlier excitement. She set her jaw, scanning the faces around her. Their curiosity was palpable, but so were her underlying fears. It was one thing to speak confidently, it was another to embody that confidence wholly. The coming days loomed large with the expectation she had ignited, and the looming deadline felt like a freight train charging down the tracks. Maria retreated to her studio, shrouded in brushes, paints, and the faint scent of turpentine. Each item had a story of its own, but they also served as a reminder of her hesitation. She faced a blank canvas, a reflection of her own uncertainty. She caught her reflection in the window. The timid artist stared back, and for a moment, she resented that image. Why was she letting her doubts dictate her narrative? The blank canvas before her mirrored her own internal barrier. Each brushstroke was a choice, a declaration of presence, and yet she hesitated. What was she really afraid of? Would they truly ridicule her vulnerabilities, or would they embrace them? The thoughts spiraled as she paced the small room, the rhythm of her steps syncing with her mounting determination. She envisioned stepping onto a stage in that gallery, her stories becoming a crescendo, connecting with the audience as they reacted in real time. As Maria prepared for her installation, she realized she could either blend into the background or step into the light. Her experiences, the laughter, the heartbreak, all felt like integral colors to her palette. But with each passing day, the weight of the project grew heavier. She felt an impending confrontation with her innermost fears. In an attempt to break free from her looming anxiety, Maria began to write. The words poured out, rough and unfiltered. For the first time, she penned her story with unflinching honesty. The ink flowed with her breath, her heart unleashed the fear that had held her captive. It wasn't just art she needed to share, it was the raw reality she had lived. The pieces began to fit together, like a mosaic, but as she crafted narratives layered in her experience, another thought surfaced: what if they didn't resonate? Would vulnerability become a weapon to unleash judgment and scorn? Frustration surged within her. Could she trust that they would grasp the very essence of her message? Maria realized she would need allies. She had built a network of hopeful, ambitious artists, but to bridge her vision with theirs required more than simply gathering stories. It demanded collaboration. She began reaching out, inviting others to share their narratives as well. The act of sharing became invigorating and transformative. One night, as they gathered to exchange their tales, Maria recognized a shift. Conversations flowed with a vibrant energy, fueled by shared vulnerability. Among them were not just fears, but revelations, hidden talents emerging, each artist's journey interweaving unexpectedly. The room pulsed with creativity, and for the first time, Maria didn't feel like an imposter. She was leading them, and more importantly, they were leading her. Yet, the nagging voice from the skeptic resurfaced. It struck a nerve. Would this group collaboration render her own voice invisible? Determined to prove its worth, Maria mulled over how to position herself amid the collective. It was vital not to lose herself in the melting pot of shared experiences. With each passing day, Maria began to formulate an approach. She would tell her story first, then invite others to reflect and respond. Her individuality would be the cornerstone, a lighthouse guiding others through the fog of their narratives. Yet beneath the surface of her newfound clarity, the unsettling question remained: could she maintain her identity when the spotlight didn't solely shine on her? As the opening night of the installation drew closer, Maria stood at an intersection of fear and resolve. Would she discover the balance necessary to allow her voice to coexist harmoniously with others? Would she be brave enough to navigate an emotional terrain where vulnerability and strength could coexist? Caught in a web of creativity and uncertainty, Maria recognized that the act of unveiling her story was not just a personal endeavor, it was a powerful leap into the unknown. The threshold of her installation loomed, whispering promises of transformation. But as the date approached, one looming thought eclipsed her excitement: could she bravely embrace this duality, allowing both her story and those of others to forge a path toward a shared understanding? In that crucible of anticipation, she realized the moment may soon arrive when she would need to confront her greatest fear: the risk of truly being seen. With the opening night in view, Maria could nearly feel the pulsing heartbeat of the gallery. Her thoughts raced, parading through untold fears and half-formed plans. Every hour that ticked by escalated the pressure, converting excitement into a simmering anxiety that buzzed along her skin. What if her narrative didn't reach her audience? What if her attempt at vulnerability felt like a clumsy spill instead of an artful brushstroke? As the days dwindled, Maria immersed herself in her preparations. She painted fervently, channeling her emotional turmoil into canvases that burgeoned with color. Each layer was a cathartic release, yet simultaneously, each stroke was a bugle call that beckoned her deeper into the fray. She was no longer just a timid artist, she was transforming into an architect of her own experience. But self-doubt crept in, whispering its familiar song. Was this transformation genuine, or merely a mask she donned to navigate the world outside? She confronted her reflection, this time anchoring herself in the truth of her current evolution. This wasn't just about putting her art in the gallery. It was about allowing herself a place in her own narrative. Determined to reveal her story with unapologetic honesty, she typed furiously into her journal one evening, the words spilling out like unraveling thread. Yet when she read back her thoughts, a gnawing discomfort settled in her gut. The vulnerability she sought to convey felt frighteningly exposed, What if the world scrutinized every flaw she laid bare? Could she endure such exposure? As shadows lengthened in the studio, she took a step back, absorbing the context of her situation. It was not merely her story she was chronicling, it was the collective lore of artists who had battled similar demons. Perhaps there was strength in showcasing her flaws, an unfiltered view into the human experience that any audience could resonate with. With a flickering ember of resolve, she drafted a plan. The opening night wouldn't just be an exhibition, it would function as a participatory dialogue, an opportunity to uplift not just her narrative but those of her peers. She began implementing her idea, inviting fellow artists to contribute their responses in real time, uniting their stories into a rich tapestry of shared experience. To do this, Maria prepared herself mentally. It wasn't simply about owning her story anymore, it was about crafting a safe space for others to awaken their vulnerabilities alongside her. The realization dawned, every artist she invited to contribute space to their growth was simultaneously reclaiming their identity under the gallery's lights. But lurking within her newfound ambition was the echoing skepticism: would this collaborative effort dilute her individual voice? Or could it magnify her impact tenfold? That night, sleep eluded her. She mentally rehearsed her speech, adjusting inflections and pauses as if designing a flawless canvas for words. The day before the installation, a pivotal moment emerged. Maria entered the gallery, her installation still wrapped in secrecy. As she looked around, the vast white walls towered, awaiting her truths. She imagined herself projecting her voice, each word resonating, each story pressing against the white backdrop, overlapping and building a powerful connection forged by shared experience. Yet, as she lingered, a wave of fear surged through her again. Was she finally ready to bare her soul? She wrestled within, contemplating what it meant to be seen, to be vulnerable before an audience. Would the audience embrace her authenticity? Or would they turn her insecurities into unkind specters haunting her work? With a shudder, she acknowledged the truth: there was no assurance. All she could control was the proactivity of her approach. As the sun dipped behind the horizon, sending rays of amber light across the gallery, Maria resolved to release her apprehensions. This was her moment to step into the frame, to breathe life into her art and to become a catalyst for others. The night loomed closer, but Maria stood firm, recognizing that her story alone might act as a beacon to others ready to face their truths. With her heart racing, she whispered a silent promise to herself: to unveil everything, raw and real, come what may. As the anticipation intensified, she pondered one final query: would she summon the courage to embrace the multifaceted identity she was constructing, both as an individual and a collective force? And as her resolve crystallized, the gallery doors beckoned, whispering of the transformative power waiting just beyond the threshold. The gallery pulsated with energy as guests murmured with excitement, arching their necks to catch glimpses of the installation Maria had meticulously crafted. Gone were the anxieties that had once plagued her. Now, confidence enveloped her like a warm embrace. She could feel the heartbeat of anticipation thrumming in the air, a universal pulse in sync with her own. Moments away from unveiling her exhibition, Maria stood at the entrance, a portal between her past and the promise of her future. The gallery was not merely a place showcasing her work, it had transformed into a sanctuary housing the narratives of many, each as vibrant and personal as her own. The intertwining stories of pain, triumph, and resilience hung on those walls, honoring each artist's journey while celebrating a shared humanity. As the doors swung open, guests poured in, and her heart raced. She was ready not just to display her art but to amplify voices that often remained unheard. She welcomed people, sharing the significance of the installation, offering glimpses of the connections woven into every piece. "Tonight isn't just about me," Maria began, her voice steady, "it's about celebrating our stories. Each of you contributes to this narrative tapestry." The guests exchanged intrigued glances, and the skepticism she once feared transformed into genuine curiosity. With each installation piece, she narrated the essence of her lineage, intertwined with those of fellow artists, expanding the definition of legacy. They were not solitary exhibitions but collective expressions, rich with cultural history. The atmosphere shifted, her words resonated with the audience, igniting a conversation echoing through the room. Maria introduced a rotating panel, allowing artists to share their reflections live with the audience. Their stories flared like fireworks, illuminating insights that fused personal history with artistic expression. She no longer felt like just a participant, she was a facilitator, a bridge connecting souls through the canvas of shared experiences, yet as she spoke, a familiar voice stirred within her, resurfacing her earlier doubts. But rather than doom her, this reflection became a source of strength. "We must be brave enough to expose ourselves," she implored the crowd. "Exposing our vulnerabilities cultivates understanding, and in doing so, we rise above judgment." The applause that followed, spirited and encouraging, resonated within her heart as a confirmation of her place in this world. In the midst of her success, Maria caught sight of Claudia, her ally who had once challenged her to prove her worth. The respect in Claudia's eyes reinforced her transformation. She was no longer just the maid but a recognized artist, a warrior of her truth, commanding attention in a realm that had once dismissed her. As the evening advanced, guests wandered from one installation to another, connecting fragments of narratives, and the feedback enveloped them in a collective warmth. "This is unlike anything we've experienced before," someone remarked, igniting excitement in Maria's chest. She had conquered her fears through decisive action. She had emerged not just a creator, but a curator of vulnerability, her narrative reshaping not only her identity but propelling the stories of others into the spotlight. And as acceptance echoed throughout the gallery, she felt an undeniable sense of accomplishment. The past was no longer a shackle but a springboard that propelled her to greater heights. She had reclaimed her family's legacy and transformed it into a narrative of empowerment. Later that night, as the last guests departed, Maria stood alone before her installation. The canvases glistened under the soft lighting, and within them lay her heart and the hearts of the many who dared to share. She had embraced every challenge, transcended her previous limitations, and now stood firm and unwavering, rooted in a foundation of courage and purpose. In that serene moment, as she gazed into the reflection of her own work, Maria recognized the profound transformation she underwent. She was no longer merely defined by her past as a maid. She had confidently cemented her identity as an artist, storyteller, and advocate for authenticity. Fully aware of the journey ahead, she understood that each step forward must now be accompanied by a commitment to uplift others, to remain part of a dialogue that continuously sought to challenge, uplift, and redefine the bounds of artistry. Filled with a solid confidence, Maria felt poised to embrace new opportunities, to continue carving out her space within the art world, and as she turned to leave the gallery, she carried with her a newfound sense of belonging and purpose, committed to nourishing the narrative that defined her. Powerful, unique, and undoubtedly hers. Now, this is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Your engagement is crucial.